This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement. The Middle Ground Mike is fighting for truth and unity. Subscribe now or support us today. Links are in the notes. Stand with us. All right, everybody, welcome to the Middle Ground Mike. Today we got a great guest. A lot of people say they want real representation and how rare it actually feels. My guest today is Eric France, a Democrat running for U.S. Congress in Illinois' 2nd District. He's running a people-powered campaign focused on affordable housing, safer streets, economic opportunity, I should say, and restoring trust in government. We talked a lot about that before the show. This isn't about party labels. It's about what leadership looks like when it actually shows up, what that means. Eric, I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell everybody a little bit about, just like, before we dig in, a little bit about who you are and how that's going to impact, your district.
Well, sure. Let me say it like this. I grew up in and around politics my whole life, politics and government, but I've never gone to the dark side until now to actually want to become an elected official. I am a career businessman. I've made most of my money as a land developer and a management consultant. I've actually done the things that I'm talking about doing. I'm not a career legislator. So I honestly believe that brings something different to the table. We have a lot of people trying to solve our problems today who have no clue because they've never done any of these things, but they're making decisions on your lives about it. So this is where we got to change the trajectory and get people in who not only understand business, but understand how to get things done and how to work with other people to make it happen.
Right. No, and that's extremely, extremely important. I talked a little bit before about how, I really believe in local representation, local government. And you said that was politics starts locally for you. Tell people how that looks, right? And how that transitions into what you're trying to do.
Well, very simply, you got to look at what the job of the congressman is. And I think we've lost sight because we're always talking about what's going on in Washington and not talking about what's going on at home. The 2nd District of Illinois specifically has 30 plus years of disinvestment in the communities. These cities have bottomed out. The farmers in this district also are not receiving the help and the support that they need to expand their businesses. We can't forget they're small business people too. Bottom line is we've not thought about them, kept them up to date, invested in our infrastructure. There are parts of this district that still don't have clean air and clean water. There are parts of this district that don't have proper internet service. In this day and age, to say that you don't have high-speed internet in your community, it's almost tragic, but it exists. We've not invested in the infrastructure. The job of the congressman is to bring back the resources and coordinate with the local officials. And part of that is listening before you lead, figuring out what people want, what they really need, and then you're the bringer back of the money. I am supposed to be the professional in Washington who lobbies for the case. And if it's not the money, then I've got to bring back the asset so that you can keep moving and you can grow. It's not about just the healthcare. It's not about just the Social Security. Those are great parts of it, but it's about the commerce in the area. Who's making sure we've got a good economic development plan? What's the 5-year plan even look like for the district that you live in? I challenge that here where I am, and I have not seen a 5-year plan yet.
Wow.
If we were in any corporation, we'd have been fired by now.
Yeah. That's just simple business. A lot of people are frustrated about these things though, right? Not just, people that per se are legislators, but why don't more people do what you're doing and running and trying to make a difference?
Well, I think it's a case of when you're going to be giving of yourself and what stage you are in your life. Having said that, this was a family discussion for me. It wasn't done in a vacuum. My daughters are all old on their own and have homeowners now, okay? They don't need me as much as they used to. I have the time now to give because it is quite a commitment. I've got a granddaughter. I'll see her in between things, but she's got the rest of her family for that. She doesn't need me every day there to be there. That having been said, the time is right in my life. I got tired of sitting on the couch yelling at the TV.
Yeah, though, those are good times.
Well, especially for problems that I know I can fix because I do it in my professional life every day. As a developer, I've built more than 2,000 units of housing just in the state of Illinois. whether it's multi-unit, single-family homes, whatever. More than 2,000, and more than that around the country, and collectively as a whole. So having said that, we need people who know how to get things done. We need people who not only know how to get them done, but they've actually done them. In my district alone, we've been talking about bringing a third major airport to Illinois. But we've been talking about it for the last 30 years.
That's
I'm a
frustrating,
developer. If it took me 30 years to build something, how much business would I really be doing?
right?
People can't wait
I mean,
30 years for economic development, and we're still talking about it.
wow, 30 years. Good grief. It's a long time. We had a train
It is.
station here in Michigan that sat abandoned for, hold on, we're in 2025 and it just opened. It's famous for blight, of Detroit. It closed in, I think, 89 or 91, and it just got reopened. So that's what, 35 years? They finally, Ford Motor bought it, renovated the whole thing, made it brand new, looking sparkling like it probably did 100 years ago when it was built.
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, I totally get that. One thing that, I was telling you that I liked is, your people powered politics model. I love that because to me, that's how politics should be regardless, right? But what I liked is the without selling out, tell us what that should mean to your voters.
Well, I mean, here's where I sit. In this race that I'm in, on May 1, when I announced that I was going to get in the race, before I officially launched on May 31st, I was the only one in the race. I have 9 opponents. There are 10 of us vying for this one seat.
Good Lord.
Most of which are elected officials sitting in other positions as we speak. Now, if you haven't done it in your last job, why are we promoting you?
Man. I totally get that part. I mean,
It's so simple. And I'll say it. There are some great legislators. A lot of them are. I won't call their names or their positions, but the bottom line is a lot of them have been great legislators. But why does our community look the way that it does, from whether you're in the rural end of the district or the urban end of the district or the suburban end of the district? Why do we have the problems we have over the last 30 years? It's not because of me.
right. No,
All
I
I'm
mean,
saying is when you had the baton, you didn't run with it.
yeah, I mean, that's 1,000% accurate. I mean, that goes right back into, like we talked before is about like, that's why voters don't trust a lot of what they see anymore.
Well, and they shouldn't. They really shouldn't. As I sit here today, it's really painful. My father, Erwin France, worked for every mayor from daily to daily in Chicago. Before people knew who Olivia Pope was, there was Erwin France. He was the fixer. That was who they called in to get things done when they were out of control. In the 60s and the 70s, he ran the anti-poverty programs in Chicago. The bottom line is, I never in my wildest dreams thinking that in 2025, I would be redoing some of the work that he was doing then. That's where we are. We've lost ground. Things are out of control.
No,
We don't have mental health care. We don't have health care. We don't have access to health care. We have substandard housing or no housing at all. People can't afford to buy homes because there are not enough affordable home programs or affordable homes being built. I can keep going up and down the list. It doesn't get any better. Our
how,
schools aren't getting any better.
no, my gosh, the education, but like when it comes to housing, like how do we need to build more homes, single family homes. I like to call them, and I don't know, I'm sure you, I mean, it being the industry, but the McMansions, right? That seems to be what a lot of the new focus is on building, right? But that's out of reach, even at a reasonable price to a lot of people. The homes that, and then the size of the homes that were in the 90s that, really helped build the middle class. I don't know about there, but I don't see a lot of those being built. It's primarily what we call the McMansions now.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I mean, we got to think about what's scalable for our economy and for the people in it. The reality is, if you don't have a job that is really a career that pays a prevailing wage, not a minimum wage,
Yes.
then who's going to ever be able to move from renter to owner?
Yeah.
We got to create opportunities that are scalable and then have something in the marketplace that they can actually afford to get into.
Yes. And better interest rates for home buyers. Yeah. We shouldn't be giving banks a better rate than we are people that need a better rate.
Absolutely.
You know, the,
Absolutely.
the overnight lending rate to me should be more of what the average person pays.
Let's take a quick break.
The Middle Ground Mic isn't just another podcast. It's a movement for unity, for truth,
for a future beyond the left and the right. But movements don't grow without people willing to stand up. Subscribe now on Buzzsprout. Fuel this mission directly on PayPal. Every subscription keeps the fire burning. The links are in the show notes. Be more than a listener, be part of the middle ground.
Well, part of it is, Joe, we've got to hold the banks responsible for adhering to the Community Reinvestment Act. There
Yes.
need to be upstream programs that allow for homeowners to buy at decent rates in certain communities where there's a shortage and where there's a need. Bottom line is we need to put these things in place and hold them accountable. We license them and allow them to do business in our communities, but we don't hold them responsible for what they're supposed to put back.
Right. But you talked about like with that, right? Like linking that to the education and the housing and economic opportunity, right? Like how do we, the workers left behind in the transition to the, transitioning away from the traditional model of what was the last 100 years of, how you factored life. How do we get people to where they need to be? So like a lot of what I've said is, we need to know more about like the process, right? Like how do we, and just like in general, right? Like how do we get people there, the ones that have been left behind?
That's a good question. I mean, a lot of it is education based. I mean, we have all of these wonderful departments in Washington, D.C. with resources, but our representatives bringing back the resources effectively to the community to serve the people. We have a whole Department of Housing and Economic Development. When I talk about affordable housing that I've built, I've done most of it with government money, bottom line. But I usually have to educate my clients and my institutions that are partnering to get these things done that the money exists and how to obtain it. It's there. We got to access it.
Right. No, I mean, it's the education is definitely a big thing. And, I know trades is a big opportunity in this country where there's a lot of good income for people to get into. But, for so long it was, get a college degree or you're not the ideal person in the future, and that seemed to be kind of like this stereotype that got stuck in everybody's head.
But part of that, Joe, is what we got to do is support the local schools.
Yes.
What we spend time doing is taking the vocational programs and alternate education programs out of the high schools. We've defunded them trying to make budgets, but we're not preparing people for the world. The reality is everybody is not going to go to college, period. Everybody's not prepared to go to college, or just that's not their path. That may not even be their want. But what I do know is if I had someone graduating qualified because they had the proper trade program in high school to learn to become an electrician, they'd get out of high school and be 18, 19 years old, making a starting salary of about $120,000 a year.
Yeah.
And ready to go. But we're not preparing them to take advantage of these things at all.
Yeah, here in my local district, my son's going into a program. I think next year he'll be a junior. Sorry, not a sophomore. But they've got a program where you can go in and you can learn to start being a firefighter / paramedic. They kind of combine them into one in a lot of cities here, and like that's so they've got that, and when he gets out of school and he's probably got a little more training to. I think they said he can make like $60,000-$70,000 a year just once he finishes it. And Michigan's for the most part, most areas are pretty reasonably priced here, in regards to, versus income. So, like, yeah, like the trades, right? Like people investing in our people in high school. That's a big thing. I mean, we need a lot of people who are skilled as electricians. We need more people who can figure out how to make a chip that they make overseas right now. Like, where's that one guy sitting in his garage that's figured out a way to make it 90% cheaper? That's how America was built. The guy in the garage or in whatever area he was, figuring out how to do it better and cheaper than everybody else.
We need an upstream to making that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not happening. I believe now in America, we have more foreign investment building things in this country than we do domestic.
Yes.
And when you're the richest nation in the world, that's a problem. To me, that should not be something that happens. So
Absolutely.
As we talk about that, how would we restore that trust in the government? Like how, because you're a reasonable individual, you give off that sincere factor. All right. So how would we restore that trust in government?
So part of it is you've got to actually be present, not just be a politician. Your district needs to have a relationship with you, whatever office you're in. They shouldn't just see you once or twice when you're running for office. You need to be present. Your staff needs to be present. You need to be accessible. And most importantly, you need to listen before you lead. It is not my job to tell you what you need. It's to hear what you need and bring it back. And this is where we've had the disconnect. We usually have people coming in and, they're upset because we've not asked them.
Right.
When I mention projects that have happened in Illinois, I go to find out that there are people who said, well, nobody ever asked us. They told us they were going to build this here, and they didn't think about how it affected me or my family or my business. And the problem was no one even had a town hall to ask. So we need to stop making people be the victims of the results of your mistakes and let them be the architects of the solution to their problems.
Right. No, I mean, that's, this show's obviously called the middle ground mic, right? That's kind of, I'm always about, I'm sure you gather in our discussions, like I'm big about trying to find a common ground on things, right?
Yes.
How in this level of, cause that was part of my next thing is we talk about things to people who disagree, and you being a reasonable person, I know probably the majority of people I've ever met in my life could sit down and have a discussion with you. Right. But how do we get these hotheads, for lack of a better way to say it? How do we get them, to me, they should be following your lead, but how do we get them there through your leadership?
Well, it's my representation more than my leadership. We lead together. This is part of what it is. We got to come to the table and have discussions like what you and I are having right now to flush out what the real issues are and flush out what the real solutions are. Are we going to agree on everything 100%? Absolutely not. Who in life does that? I don't know about you. I'm married and I got 3 women in the house on top of that. I'm never going to win an argument.
Nope,
but we can usually come to some middle ground.
Yes.
But what we do know is I'm never going to get in the bathroom when I want the bathroom. And I've just got to accept that. That's just what it is.
Yeah. And getting away from that, the person you disagree with is the bad guy.
Well, who's the bad guy?
It depends on the person.
Well, who's the bad guy? It may not be that either one of them are bad. They're just in 2 different places.
Right.
There's not always a bad guy. Sometimes there truly is, and it's easy to see. And even they know it because they're trying to be the bad guy.
Yes, 1000% on that. I can't agree with that more. I mean, that's a better way to put it. Much, much better way to put it. And you talked about, we were even talking about, the voters who feel excluded, right? Those are the ones to me that are making you have 2 sets of voters, right? You have I think, what is it in the United States? 60% now technically identify themselves as barely a party or independent. It fluctuates depending on the poll. But, you either have those ones who tend to be the quiet ones, or you have the ones that feel excluded that become the loudest in the room. So you either have people who aren't talking at all, or you have the ones that are screaming. There seems to be, like what you and I are doing seems to be the exception to the norm.
It's the tone that we set and how you come in the door. I have a lot of knowledge on a lot of things, but I'm not the authority on you and what you want.
Yes.
I've got to listen. At the end of the day, I've got to listen, period. And if you're leading without listening, then who are you leading and what are you leading them to?
Right. Yes, that's literally my next question for you is going to be what real unity actually requires. And that pretty much says it right there, spot on. You answered it before I could even ask it.
I mean, by trade, I am a leader professionally. That is what I do. I'm a management consultant. People come to me for an answers and a path forward. That is what people do. I lead every day, but I am not so naive that I'm going to walk in the room and tell the client, I've got all of your problems fixed right here in my little bag of tricks. And when I leave, everything's going to be fine. No, I've got to lay out a roadmap. I've got to be questioned about it. I've got to be prepared to answer. I've got to be prepared to make adjustments where need be. This is how we must govern. This is how we must serve the public. It's no different.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just kind of like, it feels like it should be obvious to people, right? You would think that it would be, that people would want that. But like, it seems like voters are baited by I almost say like extremists, but the loudest voice in the room, rather than the sensible people in the room. The sensible people in the room just sometimes, seem to get left out. And it's, we got to get people back to realizing that sensibility will get people more of what they want, what they're angry about, what they're frustrated about, than, the people who are sitting there just rattling their cages sometimes to get them worked up. And then after the election, who are you? I've never heard of you
Well, they
before.
can't get to you. They can't text you and they can't see you until it's time to run again, unless
Right.
they're buying a ticket to a fundraiser and paying to be there. And they shouldn't have to do that. People ought to have regular office hours. They ought to have regular staff. If I'm not here, you ought to know my district director. And you ought to know that you ought to be able to reach out to them in any case. And that district director ought to be as responsive as I am to say, hey, you need to get involved with this. We got a situation. And I need to be in a position to be part of that situation and get it solved.
Yeah. I mean, that's that's insanely important for people. What kind of congressman would you per se be on like a day to day, right? Like, let's say you're elected, you in the election, everybody's like, like how is that? How does that look like day to day for you?
Well, clearly you have the Washington priorities that you have to do. But part of
Right.
the work that you have to do in Washington is bringing back what you need to your community. If that means that I'm talking with key people in key departments of the country to bring back that resource, whether it's the Commerce Department for programs for small businesses or Small Business Administration or Treasury for finance or banking for community reinvestment or housing and urban development to get more senior housing or housing for veterans or special populations. I need to be involved and they need to know I'm going to be the bringer back for my district. I've got to answer to my folks to solve their issues. I can't just be there and say, well, I signed on to this bill for that and the other. That's great. But if I'm not taking care of home, then what am I doing?
Right. I mean, that's what do you see from your end as a challenge if you get elected?
Where do I start? The challenge is starting the whole working your way out. You're from Michigan. You know what it's like to get stuck in the mud.
Yes.
And sometimes you start with just the tires spinning and spinning and spinning until you're able to get traction. But partially when you get traction, what do you have to do? You have to put a wedge in somewhere so that you can get between you and the mud. I am that wedge that has to bring us out of that hole.
No, and that's important.
Yeah, that's what needs to be done. That's the challenge. But, sometimes you got to get down in the dirt and the mud to make it happen. And that's where we are. I don't know how
Yeah.
we, to this day, that we got infrastructure problems in most states in this country. I don't know how we got to the point in the second congressional district where if I look pound for pound about how we're doing, we're being over-indexed by the entire state of Mississippi. They're beating us in education, not only development, job development, and keep going, new housing starts. I can go up and down the list. They're on a great
Wow.
path down there, and a lot of the other southern states are. Why us in the Rust Belt, as we like to call it, why factories closed, no new jobs, no new technology, no new universities getting funded, nothing. Our infrastructure is poor at best.
Yes. Very poor.
I have a community in my district that's had issues with clean water that would date back to the Oprah Winfrey Show. And the Oprah Winfrey Show hasn't been on in at least 25 years.
Whew. It's been that long.
They're waiting for a $75 million fix.
Wow.
And
I
no
mean, in the
one,
grand scheme of things, at the federal level, that's really a drop in the bucket.
sure.
At the federal level, not local level, but at the federal level, that's a drop in the bucket.
But that's where I'm going is the federal level. Who's
Yeah.
going to bring it back? Who's going to lobby for it? You know about the Flint, Michigan water crisis. No
Yes.
different. These are infrastructure issues.
Yeah, and they're not properly addressed. I mean, no matter the state, the party, it just kind of seems to be something that's left behind. And the one thing that I have seen is, hey, we're going to build this new thing, whatever, da da da. Okay, great. But the one thing I never hear is, all right, how are we going to fund it beyond when this 5-term or this 5-year project, expires? Like, what's that upfront nest egg we can put to make sure 10, 15 years we're not having this conversation about how to fix it?
It's a little thing that corporations do every day. It's called capacity planning. We've got to
Right.
start running this government like the business that it is. We got to start supporting these communities like the businesses that they are and that want to be there. And we have not been doing it.
No, we've done
I had
poor
someone
job.
in this race complain because we had a case where they had money in the unit of government they were in to build another shelter and they couldn't get a community to take it. And
Really?
my answer was, I don't blame them because
Wow.
you're not solving the problem. You were taking people and you were housing them overnight and then setting them loose on the street all day, hoping that they're going to get back in the following night, and you're not addressing their problems. We got to stop not addressing people's problems and housing them overnight until we can get to the next day. It's not a day by day thing. We got to have comprehensive plans and funding to support them. I don't want to build another shelter ever in this district. I want to build another house with supportive services or an apartment complex where they can get what they need so that they don't have to be homeless, jobless, or whatever else it is. We need to bring those things to the people. They want them and they deserve them, whether it's our seniors, whether it's our young people who are there by no fault of their own because they've aged out of foster care systems and situations. You're 18, you're on your own.
Right. And that's how poverty starts.
That's how it starts. And that you're starting behind the 8 ball. And you had nothing to do with it. All you did was you were born and things didn't work out down your level. And we're not here supporting you. If you're a homeless veteran, thank you for your service, but we're not helping you. We've got to
Right.
prepare people with the programs that exist and get them out of these situations and make sure that the facilities to take care of their needs are in our communities.
Yeah,
We
I've
are
heard a
not doing the
couple.
job.
I've heard of a couple communities. I think one of them's in either Colorado or Utah, and I believe another one's in, I believe it's Baltimore, where they've taken, I should say, like abandoned apartment buildings or skyscrapers, whichever, and the state government has renovated them and used them for like halfway housing for the homeless. Giving them a place, an address to get their life started again. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, we got so many abandoned buildings in this country. Why is that not something that's like, taking storm, like, taking the country by storm?
Well, you're right. You're right on target with that. But the problem is the cities and the governments are not housing authorities and don't need to be managing these properties or those services. This is where public-private partnerships need to be put in place to make it work. That doesn't need to be in a city's inventory. It needs to be gifted or sold to a private person who can go and apply and use those federal funds to provide said services and pay for the rehab. This is a lot of the work that I do, even when building brand new from the ground up. I built probably the first of its kind in this country, if it's still not the only of its kind in this country. I built housing for the developmentally disabled and the chronically mentally ill on the west side of Chicago. It was partnered with the Bobby Ray Community Mental Health Center. So now they can serve their population and they have safe places where they can live and receive their independent services and live independent lives, and they're not a charge to anyone. And all they're doing is taking the same Section 8 certificates or whatever other governmental assistance and using it to pay for it, and they have a place to stay. But we got to free up these types of arrangements to make them smooth and make them happen. This is what
Yeah.
we need to be bringing back. And yes, rehab, there are programs to do rehabs.
Yeah, no, I've got my 7-year-old, he's autistic. He's speech delayed, insanely smart. I mean,
Mhm.
he's in general education, but he sometimes you'll be like, "Hey, Henry," and he's like not even looking at you, like acting like you don't exist.
Right.
He has to have a parrot part of the time. So
Mhm.
I get, like I love that you said that for the, developmentally disabled, because I mean there's a lot of people who through no fault of their own don't have that ability. And like my son, he's my in-laws, gave him money. He was literally able to sit there and count it, right? Boom,
Mhm.
boom, boom. But with his speech issues, if you were to say, "Hey, Henry, did you pick up all your clothes today?" He's gonna go, "Me and mommy hung out today." So it's like those type of things, right? Where I mean, he's growing into things and getting a lot more, if you want to call it, of a normal thinking process. But I don't know what that's going to look like in 50 years from now, 30 years from now.
But
I'll be
we as
long
leaders,
gone.
but we as leaders have to have the compassion to have that forward thought and
Right.
make these programs available and create situations so that you're not a parent who's in distress.
Yeah. I've taken a lot of it. And I know a lot of people you take a lot of it like on, right? My 16-year-old goes, "I'm never going to let my brother be left out, left behind." And it's sad that we even have to say something like that, right?
Yes.
America should not have to say that. Citizens should not have to say that. As we bring this home, that really that right there, I appreciate what you're doing in that aspect, because
Thank you.
that hits home. Like I mean that's a big deal.
So this is what I go back to saying. This has been my life's work. And if you want to help me with this life's work, France4Congress.com. It's not easy. It's not cheap. We need donations. We need to make it to March 17th to get over the finish line to make things happen. Follow me on all my social media. Shoot me a note and email if you need to do that. We actually respond. We're there now. We intend to be there in the future. The majority of my team is not paid consultants. In fact, we don't have any paid consultants at all. These are people who are compassionate and care and want to see this thing happen and change. This is how we're going to make a difference. We got to stop making it about the money. Of course, it takes some money, but we shouldn't be in these $1 million races for seats.
Right.
We need to be at this level, having these conversations, making these things happen. We need to be present and passionate about it. This is what we need.
No, I mean, and you know, folks in that district down there, you guys got a great candidate here, a guy who truly cares. I don't know about the rest of the candidates, but one thing I can truly say as a you know, person who is in business, somebody who cares, that's like step one for leadership, caring. And if you that address all your leaders that way, caring, that is where it starts.
I'll leave you with this, Joe. In any company, if you were performing this badly, you'd be put on a 90-day improvement plan. And if you couldn't fix it, you'd be gone in 90 days. We got to stop sending people back over and over again or elevating them and giving them a free pass. We're not going to make any change doing that.
No, and we won't. You know, Eric, I really appreciate you coming on. You know, everybody, this was my conversation with Eric France, a congressional candidate, Illinois' 2nd district, right? If I'm correct.
Got it.
I'm terrible at butchering things. You know, if you want to learn more about Eric or get involved, you can find his campaign online. You know, everybody, as always, I appreciate listening. His link will be down there in the description. Check it out below. This is the Middle Ground Mike. You know, here we're no left, no right, just forward. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope everybody has a good day.
Thank you, and thank you, Middle Ground.